Hello and welcome to the third episode of Q&A with Mr. Casual, Charlie DeChant. I'm Michael Laderman. He's Charlie DeChant, sax player for Daryl Hall and John Oates since 1976. This is where Charlie responds to your questions as opposed to him on Facebook. So let's get right to it. So today, one of our questions is from someone whose son is a music education major who plays trombone since the age of 13. Now, they live in an apartment. It's difficult to practice in an apartment, especially now.
Especially on a trombone.
What's that?
Especially on a trombone. Or saxophone is kind of the same, in the same situation, practicing. Yeah.
So you understand the difficulties. The larger the instrument, the more difficult it is to practice in a small, confined space. So what advice do you give those young music students for staying the course during these days? So especially now when you're confined in the house and you have to practice all the time and you got a large instrument, what do you tell the student?
Well, on a trombone, different than a saxophone, there's no such thing as a saxophone mute. I've seen things like where you have what looks like a saxophone-shaped case with a little thing for the mouthpiece to come out and little things for your hands to go in, to mute the sound of the horn. It's just like a little room that you put over your sax so that the sound doesn't get out. Not very satisfactory and, awkward and expensive and not very good. Trombone, there are actually mutes that you could put on a trombone that will diminish the sound quite a bit. So the trombone player might look into those kind of things.
Are there more difficulties besides just because you're in a small area and how loud it could be? Or is it also, might there be difficulties just finding the space to play and practice?
No, I think it's still possible, but look into getting a mute for the trombone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as far as like, how are you going to practice your instrument if you can't actually play your instrument? There's, it's impossible. Unless you play something else, you can play a keyboard or something, but that's not like practicing a trombone. The situation that it is now, it's kind of like everybody's stuck in the house, and maybe, just to find a space where you can actually close the door, put a mute on the trombone, and I'm thinking of the bathroom. I used to like the bathroom's a good place to get a good sound, but you don't necessarily want to get a good sound, and then somebody might want to use the bathroom while you're playing. The thing about practicing is it's never enjoyable. It's not. It's really like if it gets to be enjoyable for the actual practicer, then the actual people that are subjected to listening to it, it's not enjoyable for them. It's like listening to the same phrase over and over, hopefully getting better, but that's the only way you're going to get better is just by doing the same thing over and over, but like better each time. That'd be ideal. Practicing is who is it that, like, I think one of my teachers say practice makes permanent. So the thing is, don't practice something wrong because you're going to learn to do it wrong and it's going to get stuck. Yeah, it is. It's important for the parents to encourage it. Like my parents encouraged me to practice, and I hated to practice when I was a kid. And it was mainly due to the material that I was forced to practice, which is my the part on alto saxophone, second alto saxophone in the band, and my parts were mostly 1, 2, so that kind of stuff. It was excruciating, even if you played it right every time, I just was not interested. And then when I got into actually, it took me really to get into practicing, to have a goal to like learn a solo of or to learn a tune by ear. Actually, that really got me into practicing a bit more.
Where do you get your sense of style and coolness from?
Well, I think my sense of coolness is just innate. I'm just the coolest guy ever.
Yeah, according to the world of the internet, yes, you are.
Well, see, the internet is sometimes correct.
Sense of style, perhaps? Where do you get that? So from the time essentially that you started with Hall & Oates in 76, instantly you were wearing things that no other band member was wearing. The other guys are casual in the sense of jeans, T-shirts, button-downs that are wide open. And here you were almost from the very beginning wearing some really stylish threads from what was.
I did. I started out wearing suits, and they weren't always necessarily stylish. I remember I had a plaid, like a plaid tuxedo jacket, sort of like Bill Haley in the comics that I wore. And I wore red shoes for a while. I was like, if I didn't wear my red shoes, people were like, oh, where's your red shoes? Come on, I have other shoes. But yeah, I always seem to wear suits. I very seldom, like, if it was really, if we're touring and we're playing outside, like sometimes I would wear a short sleeve shirt. Oh my God. So, a Hawaiian shirt or whatever. But yeah, that was part of my deal. And the thing is, like, if you're out there in front of thousands of people and there's a spotlight on you, you need to really step up and do something like worthy of them. Like, oh, the light's on me. I need to be doing something, So yeah, there's no time to be shy and retiring, when you got the spotlight on you.
So was that shtick, so to speak, instilled in you, or did they ask you to do that initially?
No, I don't think they ever asked me to do that. It's the whole thing of being in the spotlight. You get in the spotlight, and then you need to own it. So I kind of learned. It didn't come natural to me. It was not a natural thing for me to be. Here I am. That kind of guy. I wasn't that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy. But when I'm on stage, yeah, I need to be that guy.
So when you were in your bands in Florida growing up and late teens, early 20s, what did you wear back then?
Oh, geez. I remember when I was in Wolfgang, we had a couple of outfits that we had bought that were like, shiny silver matching shirts and that kind of stuff. And I remember, one time in Wolfgang, like Wayne, the guitar player, was a very tall guy, and Brooks, the bass player, was a short guy. So we went out, and Brooks was going to buy some. What do they call them? Those really high shoes. The elevator. No, they're called. What do they call those kind of shoes?
I was going to say the elevator shoes, but
yeah, not but these were like the stylish shoes. Really like high-heeled shoes. All right, so yeah, he bought a pair of those, and then of course Brooks bought them, the short guy, and then the tall guy had to buy a pair of them too. So the whole thing of like between the short and the tall guy was the same, and I ended up buying a pair of them. Like they were cheap, they were like oxblood and gold. And I think I wore them once. In fact, not even a whole night, like one set. I wore them. Like, these are really, really uncomfortable. I'm not going to wear these anymore. And I kept them around for years and years. And they were like in that Tarantino movie, the drug dealer had a pair of shoes that were in an alcove. These are my cool shoes, and I'm just going to keep them and not ever wear them.
You had mentioned before in the last couple of years how you got the name Mr. Casual. And you had alluded to, you thought and you were pretty sure that it came from Daryl. You don't remember when or where, just one day it just came out like, hey, you're Mr. Casual.
Yeah.
So do you think that was perhaps because of how cool and casual you dress, or is it more of the persona within you, or is it a combination of both? What's that story of becoming Mr. Casual?
Yeah. It wasn't about like, I didn't really dress casual. You know, you wear a suit that, like a suit is not casual, you know. But you know, it was just my persona, you know. I would step out and of course I was there. I was in the spotlight, but I always had to be cool, you know. So yeah, that was it.
Simple as that, huh?
Pretty much. You know, the thing is like you can't give yourself a nickname. There's no way, you know. I remember when George on Seinfeld, he was going to call himself T-Bone, but nobody was going to call him T-Bone. Actually, T-Bone got his nickname from his penchant for playing his bass behind his head when he was taking a solo. So I just like T-Bone Walker. He used to play his guitar behind his head, you know. So yeah, he got the nickname T-Bone from that.
And thus you get the name Mr. Casual for just being Mr.
Just
Casual.
being sure, pretty much, yeah.
Talk about your keyboard playing. You're known for the sax, but you probably play the keys just as much as the sax.
Yeah, that's true. I do like during the set. I've only have really a couple of sax songs, maybe 4 or 5 songs, and mostly I play keyboards and sing background vocals with all the rest of the background singers in the band. And you know, my keyboards are not technically very challenging, actually, which is good for me because I'm not technically a very great keyboard player. There was a point where they reorganized the band. It was in I would say the late 70s, and they dropped in fact, I think the whole rhythm section and the other keyboard. Daryl plays keyboards too, but the other keyboard player was out of the band and said, "All right, Charlie, you're going to have to play all the keyboards now." What do you want me to do? And they gave me I think it was a Prophet 5, which I had never even laid hands on. And you have to learn this synthesizer. You know, it's enough that I have to learn to play all the keyboard parts on the songs, but then I have a synthesizer they have to deal with, like getting all the different sounds that need to be done. And so they got Larry Fass to come in and program it. The problem is he programmed the string sounds. They sounded good, but to get a good string sound, you have to detune the oscillators, right? And so what I had no idea of how to change that myself because I'm very ignorant in that kind of stuff. Still, like technical stuff is kind of like remains beyond me a lot. And I eventually I had to retune the synthesizer every time I played a string sound because they were tuned so that one oscillator was to the regular pitch and the other one was detuned. Well, they should have detuned both of them so that they would, like the center pitch would have, you know, that kind of stuff. I dealt with that for like a year. Like every time I changed to a string sound, I would have to retune the synthesizer. So it was a little crazy, but I got through it.
They trusted you enough, obviously, to be their keyboard player. So, you know, you say on one hand, well, you know, it's I'm really not that great, but on the other hand, you are a keyboard player for Daryl Hall and John Oates. So that does have a lot to say about your ability.
Yeah, well, it was It was not easy, but I got it, you know.
Now, go back to one of our interviews. I believe it was last week's, our second edition of doing this, where you alluded to how you and your mom were playing the piano together, and she was getting you into that initially.
Yeah.
How far did you take that, and was that perhaps going to be your main instrument before the sax came along?
Um, it's kind of hard to remember. I was probably about 5 when I started that, and I probably only took lessons for like a year. And then we moved to Florida, and of course we didn't have a piano, and that was it for piano lessons. But I have a soft spot in my heart for the piano. I always like, anytime I would be in a room with a piano, it's like I would have to go over and play something, and I still do that. I have a piano right over here in back of me. A baby grand piano that I found out when we were living in Long Island. There was a sign on a music store. It said baby grand piano, $100. What? Okay, let's go check it out. And so we drove out, and the thing was like way out of tune. And Sheila says, it's out of tune. Yeah, well, that's what a piano tuner is for, So eventually, I got, I rented a truck, a van. I rented a van and moved the piano to our house. Had a tune, and somehow or another got down to Florida.
Now, who gets more use out of the piano these days? Is it you or is it your wife, Sheila?
She's got her own like electronic piano in the bedroom that she works on. Every now and then she'll come in here when I'm playing or something. Like she'll play her song on it. But probably when I'm out of the house, if I'm on tour, she might come in here and play it. But she probably plays her own piano a little more than this thing. I always liked it that you don't have to turn it on. All you have to do is just go up to it and put your fingers down on the keys and play something. And I like that. It's even easier than putting a sax together.
You mentioned just very quick in passing, you just said, when you're on the road and when you're on tour. Talk about those favorite moments on the road over the years that you might have had. First of all, what makes being on the road special, if it is? And when you have been on the road extensively as you have been, what are some of those favorite moments?
So yeah, when you're on the road, you have a lot of time on your hands, and I will normally carry at least my flute and my soprano sax to my room and practice in my room. And I usually will wait until a reasonable hour to start practicing, and usually the flute is a little more palatable for people in the immediate vicinity. But I will sometimes play the soprano. But what I have is like a little keyboard that stays on the road, and so after we've flown in and everything, I will get that keyboard and bring it to my room, hook it up to my laptop, use the sound in the laptop, and just play them. So I'll have a piano to practice or to write on. I've written several tunes on the road. I used to have a guitar that actually Daryl gave it to me. It was a backpacker, which is a really small guitar, hardly any body to it. It's kind of like the sound is like a really quiet banjo, not much sustain on it, but it's a guitar, 6-string guitar, and you can. And I've written a bunch of tunes on that guitar as well. So yeah, that's one of the things that will occupy me. Lot on the road. I like to walk, actually, more than takes a taxi. If you take a taxi or an Uber these days, you actually have to know where you're going. So walking is a good way to see, like, oh well, where am I? Let's walk around and see. Maybe I can find my way back to the hotel. I like to walk, and I like to go to museums. I like art museums a lot. And so anytime I can find an art museum that's within reasonable walking distance, I'll go, because I'm a big art aficionado.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Q&A with Mr. Casual Charlie DeChant. For Charlie DeChant, I'm Michael Laderman. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time. Be safe, everybody.